Chapter 1. The Weight of Years. I used to believe that loyalty could save a family. I believed that if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet long enough, and carried enough of the weight, the people I loved would eventually see me, appreciate me, maybe even protect me. But the truth I discovered was nothing like the story I told myself. While I was holding this house together with both hands, my father and sister were quietly tearing my life apart behind my back, signing my name on loans I never agreed to, and sinking my credit for their own survival. I thought I was helping them stay afloat. I did not know I was the one being sacrificed. And when I found the deed my mother signed before she died, giving this house to me in her final attempt to protect the only child who ever protected her, something inside me finally shifted. I realized love is not proven by silence, and loyalty means nothing when only one person is required to bleed for it. That was the day I stopped shrinking. The day I gathered every piece of truth they buried, and the day I learned that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to stand alone. I wake up before the sun rises, the way I have most mornings since I moved back into this house in 2014. The air inside feels still and heavy, almost damp with the weight of years. The rooms are familiar in a way that borders on suffocating. Every corner holds a memory, but not the kind that brings warmth. It is the kind that presses down on your chest, slowly, quietly, until you forget what it feels like to breathe freely. I lie there for a moment longer, listening to the hum of the old ceiling fan, telling myself that today will be like every other day. Then a strange awareness settles in. Something underneath the surface feels off, though I cannot name it yet. I tell myself it is nothing. It never is, at least not at first. By the time I reach the kitchen, the house is awake in its usual uneven way. Summer is already there, leaning against the counter with a stack of envelopes fanned out in her hand. She does not look at me when I walk in. She simply flicks her wrist and lets the stack land on the table in front of me with a soft slap. The envelopes scatter a little. Unpaid bills. Again. She folds her arms and waits, tapping her foot in a rhythm that is meant to irritate. She does not need to say anything. I understand the message the same way I have for years. You handle it. You always do. Riley walks in next, scratching the side of his neck like he has just rolled out of bed. He glances at the bills, glances at Summer, then looks at me as if a decision has already been made. He tells me she is having a rough month, that I should help her out. He does not ask if I can. He does not ask if I am okay. He simply expects. I have lived inside this arrangement for so long that my silence fits perfectly into place. I push the envelopes together, forming a neat pile out of habit. Underneath that simplicity, something unsettled shifts. I do not know the truth yet. I only know that something is beginning to crack. Summer keeps talking, her tone sharp enough to scratch metal. She says I should be grateful that she and Dad let me stay here, that I owe them stability. The words hit in a familiar pattern, but one lands harder than the rest. It triggers a memory I have not touched in years. I am 12 again, standing in this same kitchen with my hands shaking, being blamed for something I did not do. Riley towering above me, voice loud enough to rattle the windows. Summer smirking behind him. Then the soft sounds of my mother's footsteps, her arms coming around me, her voice in my ear reminding me that some wounds stay quiet because naming them would make them unstoppable. I hold on to that memory for a moment, long enough to feel the sting return and fade. The morning moves on like it always does. Summer storms out. Riley follows at a slower pace, leaving a faint sense of aftershave and irritation behind him. I clean the counter even though there is nothing on it. It's a habit that keeps my hands busy. I tell myself to breathe. Then I gather my bag and leave for the hospital. At the community hospital, the rhythm is different, but the pressure feels the same. The halls echo with voices, the distant beep of monitors, the sharp smell of disinfectant. I have worked in administrative coordination for years, long enough to sense when people are watching. Evelyn Cross corners me near the break room, her expression polite in the way that always means trouble. She asks if everything is all right at home. She asks if I am managing. She asks if the rumors are true. Her tone is dipped in curiosity that feels more like judgment. I answer with something vague, something safe. She studies me with that look people use when they decide they know better than you. I excuse myself before she can press further. By mid-afternoon, my thoughts drift back to the bills on the table and that uneasy feeling from the morning. I tell myself to shake it off. I tell myself I am imagining things. I have learned to second-guess myself in this family. Years of practice. Before my shift ends, I check my phone and see a notification from the bank. It's short, simple, almost harmless if read out of context. A reminder about a loan opened in 2021, under my name. It's not shocking at first, more puzzling than anything else. I don't remember opening a loan. I scroll through my memory, trying to place it. Nothing fits. A slow unease begins to rise, the kind that gathers in the stomach and works its way up. I close the message and slip the phone back into my pocket. I tell myself I will look into it later. I do not tell anyone. Not yet. When I return home, the sun has already dipped behind the neighbor's roofline, casting long shadows across the front yard. Inside, the house feels dimmer than usual. Summer is not yelling. Riley is not pacing. It is quiet in a way that should be comforting, but somehow is not. I walk into the kitchen and set my bag on the counter. The room smells faintly of old coffee and something metallic. Maybe it is only my nerves. I unlock my phone again and read the bank message for the second time, then a third. The words have not changed, but they hit differently now. I stand there for a long moment. The hum of the refrigerator fills the silence, steady and low. My heartbeat is louder, slower, heavier. It is the sound of something beginning to shift, not in the world around me, but in the space inside myself I have kept sealed for too long. I slide the phone onto the table next to the stack of unpaid bills Summer left that morning. The envelopes are slightly crumpled at the edges. The bank notification glows softly beside them. It feels like the beginning of something, although I cannot see its shape yet. I only know that the ground beneath me does not feel as stable as it did when the day began. I lean against the counter and let the quiet settle. For the first time in a long time, I am not pushing it away. I am listening to it, letting it tell me what I have tried not to hear. Something is wrong, and it has been wrong for a very long time. I stay there until the light outside fades completely, letting the truth rise in me slowly, like the start of an unwelcome but necessary awakening. Chapter 2. Traces in the Dark. That night, sleep does not come easily. I move through the usual motions, washing dishes that are already clean, straightening a stack of mail that has already been sorted, turning off lights that were never on. Every small task feels like a way to avoid opening my phone again and looking at that message from the bank. Eventually, the house goes quiet. Riley has gone to his room, the television in the living room goes dark, and Summer leaves to meet a friend. The stillness settles over everything. I sit at the kitchen table with my laptop in front of me. The clock on the stove blinks a late hour in green numbers. Outside, Waco feels far away, just a muted outline beyond the window. Inside, the only sounds are the soft whir of the ceiling fan and the low rush of the air conditioner kicking on and off. I sign in to my online banking, my fingers slower than usual, as if part of me is trying to stall. The screen lights up my face as the account overview loads. It looks familiar at first. The checking account I use for groceries and gas. The savings account that never quite grows. Then I move to the credit section, and I see more entries than I remember. I click on one opened in 2018, another in 2021, another in 2022. I stare at the dates, at the listed balances. My name is there on each one, neat and confident in printed letters on the screen. But my mind cannot place ever signing for any of them. My pulse picks up. I click deeper into the document section. There are scanned images of contracts, consent forms, pages where my signature is supposed to be. I zoom in. In the glow of the laptop, I study the loops and lines. It looks like my handwriting at first glance, but the more I stare, the more off it feels. Letters that lean in a way mine do not. A flourish at the end of my name that I do not use. My breath tightens in my chest. I whisper to myself that there has to be an explanation. Maybe I forgot. Maybe the hospital offered some consolidation loan and I signed without thinking. I scroll and scroll, but nothing connects to anything I recognize. The loans deposit into accounts with this house as the listed address. The more I read, the more my skin prickles. I feel exposed, even though I am alone. A door closes down the hall. Footsteps come toward the kitchen. I quickly close the laptop enough to dim the light, but not snap it shut. Summer walks in, still in makeup from whatever bar or restaurant she has just left. She pours herself a glass of water and glances at me. "You are up late, Marina." I tell her I had some paperwork to check. My voice sounds flat even to my own ears. She looks at the laptop, then at me. "Everything all right?" "Just trying to make sense of some charges," I say. "There are some things on my account I do not remember." She rolls her eyes and takes a sip of water. "Banks always mess stuff up. You worry too much." She taps the stack of envelopes I moved earlier. "Besides, you know you can afford it more than I can. You have the hospital job. I have been struggling." Her tone turns sharp on that last word, like I am meant to feel guilty. Riley appears in the doorway then, hair messed, wearing an old t-shirt. He asks if everything is okay. Summer answers before I can speak. "She's freaking out about money again, Dad. Thinks the bank is out to get her." Riley gives a half laugh, the kind that never reaches his eyes. "You have always been dramatic about bills, Marina. That is why I pay attention, and you should just relax. Let us handle things. You just keep working. That's what you're good at." Something inside me flares. I want to ask him exactly what he has been handling, but the words catch on the way up. Years of swallowing my questions have formed a thick wall inside my throat. I manage to say that I'm going to talk to the bank directly. Summer shrugs, and Riley waves a hand as if none of this matters. "Suit yourself," he says, already turning away. "Just don't make a scene." After they leave the kitchen, the house feels even quieter than before. I open the laptop again and stare at my own name on the screen. For the first time, instead of assuming I made a mistake, I wonder if someone else deliberately stepped into my identity. The thought is so heavy, I almost close the computer and pretend I never saw any of it. Instead, I force myself to take a screenshot, then another, saving the files to a folder on my desktop. The next day, during my lunch break at the hospital, I step outside near the parking lot where the Texas sun bounces off windshields and concrete. I call the bank. After a few layers of automated menus, I'm transferred to a representative who introduces herself as Carla Jensen. Her voice is steady, efficient, with the kind of polite distance you expect from someone who deals with worried customers all day. I tell my name, verify my information, and explain that I'm seeing accounts I do not remember opening. She asks for time to pull up the history. I pace in the thin strip of shade beside the building while I wait, looking at the cars at the small stand of live oaks by the road. Carla comes back on the line and confirms the dates. Loans opened in 2018 and 2021, refinanced in 2023. I ask if it's possible they are a mistake, some misapplied record. Well, she says, the system shows signed documents. It lists this address on Magnolia Street as the residence. That's your current home, correct? Yes, I answer, feeling the word scrape its way out. She hesitates. If you don't recall opening these, you may want to file a fraud inquiry. I can email copies of the signatures for you to review. My mouth feels dry. Please do. After we hang up, I stand there for a second long, squinting into the sunlight. The truth is inching closer, and I'm not sure I'm ready to see its full shape. Still, a part of me that is tired of being confused and ashamed pushes forward. That evening, the email arrives. Scanned pages, my name written in ink that is almost mine, but not. The signatures look like someone practicing my hand, not living in it. My breath tightens in my chest. I whisper to myself that there has to be an explanation. Maybe I forgot. Maybe the hospital offered some consolidation loan, and I signed without thinking. I scroll and scroll, but nothing connects to anything I recognize. The loans deposit into accounts with this house as the listed address. The more I read, the more my skin prickles. I feel exposed, even though I am alone. A door closes down the hall. Footsteps come toward the kitchen. I quickly close the laptop enough to dim the light, but not snap it shut. Summer walks in, still in makeup from whatever bar or restaurant she has just left. She pours herself a glass of water and glances at me. "You are up late, Marina." I tell her I had some paperwork to check. My voice sounds flat even to my own ears. She looks at the laptop, then at me. "Everything all right?" "Just trying to make sense of some charges," I say. "There are some things on my account I do not remember." She rolls her eyes and takes a sip of water. "Banks always mess stuff up. You worry too much." She taps the stack of envelopes I moved earlier. "Besides, you know you can afford it more than I can. You have the hospital job. I have been struggling." Her tone turns sharp on that last word, like I am meant to feel guilty. Riley appears in the doorway then, hair messed, wearing an old t-shirt. He asks if everything is okay. Summer answers before I can speak. "She's freaking out about money again, Dad. Thinks the bank is out to get her." Riley gives a half laugh, the kind that never reaches his eyes. "You have always been dramatic about bills, Marina. That is why I pay attention, and you should just relax. Let us handle things. You just keep working. That's what you're good at." Something inside me flares. I want to ask him exactly what he has been handling, but the words catch on the way up. Years of swallowing my questions have formed a thick wall inside my throat. I manage to say that I'm going to talk to the bank directly. Summer shrugs, and Riley waves a hand as if none of this matters. "Suit yourself," he says, already turning away. "Just don't make a scene." After they leave the kitchen, the house feels even quieter than before. I open the laptop again and stare at my own name on the screen. For the first time, instead of assuming I made a mistake, I wonder if someone else deliberately stepped into my identity. The thought is so heavy, I almost close the computer and pretend I never saw any of it. Instead, I force myself to take a screenshot, then another, saving the files to a folder in my desktop. The next day, during my lunch break at the hospital, I step outside near the parking lot where the Texas sun bounces off windshields and concrete. I call the bank. After a few layers of automated menus, I'm transferred to a representative who introduces herself as Carla Jensen. Her voice is steady, efficient, with the kind of polite distance you expect from someone who deals with worried customers all day. I tell my name, verify my information, and explain that I am seeing accounts I do not remember opening. She asks for time to pull up the history. I pace in the thin strip of shade beside the building while I wait, looking at the cars, at the small stand of live oaks by the road. Carla comes back on the line and confirms the dates. Loans opened in 2018 and 2021, refinanced in 2023. I ask if it's possible they are a mistake, some misapplied record. "Well," she says, "the system shows signed documents. It lists this address on Magnolia Street as the residence. That's your current home, correct?" "Yes," I answer, feeling the word scrape its way out. She hesitates. "If you don't recall opening these, you may want to file a fraud inquiry. I can email copies of the signatures for you to review. My mouth feels dry. Please do. After we hang up, I stand there for a long second, squinting into the sunlight. The truth is inching closer, and I am not sure I am ready to see its full shape. Still, a part of me that is tired of being confused and ashamed pushes forward. That evening, the email arrives. Scanned pages, my name written in ink that is almost mine, but not. The signatures look like someone practicing my hand, not living in it. I forward the documents to Callum Reyes with a simple message. Can we talk? I think something is very wrong. Callum replies quickly and suggests meeting at a coffee shop downtown the next day. When I walk in, he is already there, older than the last time I saw him, but with the same thoughtful expression. He stands, gives an awkward half hug, then nods toward the table where his laptop and a folder already sit. I spread out the printouts Carla sent, along with my own samples of signatures from work forms and old leases. Callum studies them quietly, his eyes moving back and forth between the pages. He traces one of the signatures with his finger, not touching the page, just following the curves in the air. Marina, he finally says, this is not sloppy. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. These loans were opened years apart. The applications used just enough real information to pass casual inspection. I ask him if it could be some stranger, someone who got my data from a breach. He shakes his head slightly. If that were the case, there would likely be more accounts, different addresses, different states. These are all tied to the house, all tied to Magnolia Street. His words settle like stones in my stomach. I picture the kitchen table, the unpaid bills, the way Riley told me to let him handle things, the way Summer insisted I owed them. I do not say the thought out loud yet. I do not need to. Callum sees it move across my face. You think it is someone in the house, he says quietly. I stare at the folder and admit that I do not want to believe that. Then I admit that I do. Both things are true at once. He tells me he can run a more formal review, that he knows someone who can analyze the handwriting and documentation at a forensic level. It will take time, but it will be worth it. I nod because doing nothing has finally become more painful than facing whatever he might find. When I get home that evening, the air in the house feels thicker. Summer is waiting in the living room, leaning on the arm of the couch with her arms crossed. Riley sits in his recliner, watching some sports show with the sound turned low. The second I walk in, Summer launches into a speech. We need to talk about the rent, Marina. Brent is breathing down my neck. I'm already 2 months behind. She pauses for effect. I told him you would help. Riley adds his voice, backing her up without missing a beat. He says that family takes care of family, that it's not fair to let Summer drown when I'm the one with a steady paycheck. How much? I ask, even though my chest is already tightening. 6,000, she says, as if it's nothing, just a number floating in the air. I know you have savings. You do not have to pretend you don't. I feel something solid rise in me. Maybe it's the memory of Callum's words. Maybe it's the image of my own forged signature on those loan papers. For the first time in years, I do not immediately move toward my wallet. I cannot do that, I say. My voice is calm, but it surprises even me. I have my own obligations. Summer laughs, a sharp sound. Your obligation is to this family. No, I answer, meeting her eyes. My obligation is to pay what I agreed to pay, not to fix secrets I never agreed to. Riley sits up straighter, annoyed. You're being selfish, Marina, after everything we've done for you. The list of everything they've done for me comes to mind and evaporates quickly because it's shorter than the list of what I've done for them. I do not argue. I simply say I need to look into some things before I give anyone money. Then I walk past them into my room, feeling their outrage cling to my back like smoke. Later that week, an email from Callum appears in my inbox. The subject line is plain, but my hands tremble when I open it. Inside is a short message saying that his contact has completed a preliminary review. Two signatures from 2018 and 2021 have been ruled highly inconsistent with my authentic samples. In other words, forged. I stare at the words until they blur. The suspicion that had been creeping around the edges hardens into fact. This is not a misunderstanding. It's not a bank error. Someone used my name on purpose. My fingers close around the phone until my knuckles pale. The house around me is quiet, but the silence no longer feels harmless. It feels like a cover laid over something rotten, something that has been growing in the dark for years, waiting for the moment I finally choose to lift it. Chapter 3. The Day I Reset the Balance. The next morning feels too quiet, like the house is holding its breath along with me. Gray light spills over the driveway and into the kitchen, turning the linoleum floor a dull silver. I stand at the counter and pour coffee, watching the steam rise and curl. My hands move on autopilot, but my mind is not numb anymore. It is awake in a way I have avoided for a very long time. Silence has always been the easiest choice in this house. Now it feels expensive. Every month, every loan, every sleepless night has been a payment. I take a slow sip, tasting the bitterness more than usual, and set the mug down. Inside my chest, something settles into place, small but solid. I am tired of paying. I carry the coffee to the dining room table and start laying everything out. The laptop, printed statements from the bank, the emails from Carla, the messages from Callum, screenshots of balances, the scan of my actual signature beside the forged ones. Then I go to my room and open the box that holds the last things of my mother, Nora. Her handwriting faces me from the top envelope, looping and sure. I take out the deed transferring the house to me, dated 2019, and the letter she wrote and never had the chance to hand me. I have read it twice so far. I do not need to read it again to know every word, but I bring it with me anyway. The table looks like an investigation board from some documentary, except this time the person under review is my own family. My heart squeezes around that thought, but it does not push me back. The ache sits there with the determination, side by side. I hear movement down the hallway, drawers shutting, the bathroom door opening. Summer is always up later than I am, always moving fast in the mornings as if the day is something she has to outrun. I sit down at the head of the table and wait. She walks in, hair pulled into a loose ponytail, phone in her hand, expression already irritated. She stops short when she sees the papers. What is all this? Sit down, Summer. The words surprise us both. I have never invited her to sit like that, never used that tone that assumes I will be heard. She narrows her eyes but pulls out a chair anyway. If this is about the rent, she says, I told Brent you were going to help. We do not have time for a lecture. It is not about a lecture, I say. It is about the truth. Footsteps sound behind her. Riley walks in, rubbing his jaw like it hurts, wearing the same faded t-shirt he sleeps in. He starts to say something, then notices the table. What is going on? I gesture to the empty chair across from me. Both of you should sit. Riley hesitates, glances at Summer, then lowers himself into the chair with a grunt. This better not be drama, he mutters. I have enough of that already. My pulse thuds in my fingers. I place my own checkbook to one side, the stack of unpaid bills to another, then pull a copy of the first loan statement into the center. You remember when that loan was opened in 2018? I ask. Summer snorts. How am I supposed to remember every little thing with money, Marina? Riley frowns. That's the consolidation thing, right? The one we needed when the roof needed repairs. I nod slowly. That account is in my name, I say. So is the one from 2021, and the refinance from last year. I never agreed to any of them. Riley waves a hand. You are misremembering. We talked about it as a family. You signed. I was there. I slide a printed image of my signature across the table toward them. Next to it, I place a copy of my real signature pulled from a hospital form. I asked someone who does this for a living to compare them. They are not the same. Summer leans forward, squinting at the pages. She says, "This looks like your writing to me. People sign things slightly different all the time. It doesn't mean anything." I feel my jaw tighten. I keep my voice level. The bank does not agree. Neither does the forensic analyst Callum consulted. They both say this is an imitation of my signature, not my actual one. For a moment, no one speaks. Riley studies the lines on the page like he's trying to will them into changing shape. "So what are you saying?" he finally asks. "That someone broke into our house, stole my information, and was nice enough to pay our bills with it?" "I'm saying," I answer, "that whoever signed these knew my handwriting well enough to copy it and knew this address well enough to use it. That list of suspects is pretty short." Summer's face flushes red. "You think Dad and I did this?" she snaps. "You think we'd steal from you?" My hands are flat on the table now, palms damp. "I think money in this house started disappearing around the same time these loans appeared. I think you and Dad have both told me to stay out of the finances and just keep working. And now, I think I was kept in the dark on purpose." Riley pushes his chair back an inch, anger flickering in his eyes. "You're being ridiculous. After everything we've done for you, letting you live here, keeping this family together, your mother would hate to hear you talk like this." I reach into the stack in front of me and pull out the deed. The paper feels heavier than it should. "This is what Mom did before she died," I say softly. "She signed the house over to me." I set the deed in the middle of the table. Both of them freeze. I can see Summer's throat move as she swallows. Riley's gaze snap from the paper to my face and back. "That can't be real," he says. "I never saw that. She would have told me." "She filed it with the county," I answer. "There's an official stamp, a recording date. I checked with the clerk's office. They mailed her a copy. She kept it in her box with her other important papers." Summer grabs the deed, scanning it so fast her eyes almost blur. "She was sick in 2019, Summer protests. "She wasn't in her right mind. You probably tricked her into this." The accusation lands like a slap, but it does not knock me down. I was expecting it. "I didn't trick her," I say. "She wrote this months before her last hospital stay, and she left a letter with it." I slide the letter over. It's worn already from the times I held it, but the ink is still strong. I continue. "She said she wanted me to have a place that was mine, somewhere safe. She said she knew I had been carrying more than anyone saw." Summer stares at the letter without touching it. Riley's shoulders slump a little, the fight going out of them, even as his pride tries to stay upright. "That's convenient," he says weakly. "She writes a secret letter and somehow it gives you everything?" I look at him for a long second. "It does not give me everything," I say. "It recognizes what I have already been doing. Paying the mortgage, covering utilities, buying groceries, taking care of her when she was sick. That's not nothing, Dad." Summer's hand trembles as she finally picks up the letter. Her eyes move over our mother's handwriting. Her mouth tightens. "This is not fair," she says. "You think you're the only one who lost her? You're the only one Mom trusted, is that it?" I feel tears press behind my eyes, but they do not fall. I know if I start crying, they will point at that instead of listening to what matters. I think Mom saw the way things were, even when nobody talked about it. The air in the room feels dense. For a moment, none of us moves. Then there's a firm knock at the front door. My stomach flips. I check the time, right on schedule. "I need you both to stay seated," I tell them. Riley frowns. "Who is that?" I walk to the door and open it. Deputy May Kendrick stands on the porch in her county uniform, hat in her hands. Behind her, the patrol car is parked at the curb, lights off. Morning sunlight light off the badge on her chest. "Ms. Holt," she says with a small nod. "Come in, Deputy Kendrick." Her presence changes the atmosphere instantly. The house, our house, feels less like a private world and more like a place under observation. I lead her into the dining room. Summer's face drains of color when she sees the uniform. Riley pushes his chair back as if instinct tells him to flee, then seems to remember that would look worse. Riley Holt and Summer Holt, May says, glancing at the paperwork in her hand. I am here to serve you both with official notice regarding this property. Summer looks at me, panic sparking. What did you do? May keeps her tone professional. This is a service of the court's decision from your hearing last month. The property located on Magnolia Street is legally titled to Ms. Marina Holt. You are being given written notice to vacate within the time frame specified here. She places the documents on the table. The papers make a soft but final sound. Riley grabs one, scanning the lines, his lips moving silently. This is crazy, he mutters. We've lived here for decades. She can't kick us out. May keeps her gaze steady. The court has already ruled on ownership. This is not a discussion about that. This is simply notice. If you have questions, you will need to address them with your attorney. Summer stands up so fast her legs scrape the floor. You planned this, she says to me, voice shaking. You've been plotting behind our backs, making us look like criminals. I meet her eyes. I didn't make you look like anything. I just brought the truth out where other people could see it. Riley looks from me to the deed, to the forged signatures, to the eviction notice. For the first time since I moved back in, he has nothing to say. May asks if they understand the timeline. They nod stiffly. She leaves a business card beside the papers and then walks back out, the front door closing quietly behind her. The silence that follows is thick. Summer's legs give out and she drops into the chair, staring at the pile of documents as if they might burst into flames. Riley stares at the wall, jaw working, hands gripping the armrests. I move to the window and look out at the small front yard, the patch of grass turning gold in the late morning light. The sunlight touches my face, warm and steady. For the first time in years, I do not feel like a guest in my own home. I feel like someone who finally stepped into the place that was always meant to be hers. Chapter 4. The Truth in the Light of Law. The week after Deputy Kendrick serves the papers, the house feels different. Not lighter exactly, but rearranged in some invisible way. Summer and Riley move around me more carefully, like I am a piece of furniture they are afraid to bump into. They speak less. When they do, it is mostly to each other, behind closed doors. I let them keep their whispers. I have enough noise in my own head. At the hospital, the shift is more obvious. People stare a little longer. Conversations drop when I walk into the break room. It does not take long for gossip to travel from a quiet street in Waco to the administrative office of a community hospital. By Wednesday, Evelyn corners me near the copier, her smile tight and interested. I heard you had the sheriff at your house, she says, taking her time aligning a stack of papers. Everything okay at home, Marina? I pretend to focus on the print job I started. Things are in process, I answer. It is a legal thing. It is being handled. She tilts her head. People are saying your dad and sister got eviction notices. Her voice drops as if she is sharing a prayer request. That must be so hard. Family stuff is always messy. I know she wants details. She wants to see whether the story matches the version she has already been told. I can feel eyes on my back from the nurse's station. It is hard, I say, keeping my voice steady, and it is personal. For a second, there is a flicker of frustration on her face, like I have ruined something for her by not providing entertainment. Then she forces the sympathetic expression back into place. Well, if you ever want to talk, she says, you know where my desk is. I tell her thank you and walk away, my cheeks burning. It is one thing to be judged inside my own house, where at least I know the history. It is another thing to feel people who barely know me slotting me into some story about the ungrateful daughter who kicked out her poor family. They don't see the forged signatures or the nights I sat by my mother's bed, counting out pills and whispering to her that it would be all right. They only see the uniform that came to my door. That evening, after I clock out and drive home past the same strip malls and gas stations, I see Nina Morley standing on my front porch. She holds a grocery bag in one hand and a nervous smile on her face. I've known Nina as the neighbor who waves when she waters her plants, and who brought a casserole when my mother passed. We are friendly, but we are not close. At least, not yet. "Hey," she says when I step out of the car. "It is okay that I stopped by?" "It is okay," I tell her. "Come in." The house is quiet. Summer is in her room with the door closed. Riley is on the back porch, smoking and pretending not to listen to anything inside. I lead Nina into the kitchen. She pulls a carton of ice cream and a tub of whipped cream out of the bag. "I did not know if you needed dinner or dessert more," she says. "I decided dessert." I laugh, a small surprise sound. Dessert is perfect. We sit at the table with bowls of ice cream between us. She watches me over her spoon, waiting. "I saw the deputy car the other day," she says gently. "And then I saw Riley and Summer yelling in the front yard after he left. I'm not asking for details. I just wanted you to know you are not crazy." The words hit me harder than anything else has all week. "You say that like you know how it feels," I say. She nods. "My parents used my credit for years," she says. "They opened store cards in my name when I was barely out of high school. By the time I found out, my score was wrecked. They said I owed it to them for everything they had done for me. When I finally reported it and moved out, the whole church said I had abandoned my family. No one wanted to hear about the bills, just the part where I walked away." I set my spoon down. There it is, the story I didn't know I needed. "What did you do?" I ask. "I stayed gone," she says quietly. "I fixed what I could, paid what I had to pay, and let the rest fall on them. It wasn't easy, it wasn't pretty, but it was the first time my life belonged to me. The truth has to stand in the light, Marina. Keeping it in the dark only ever helps the people who are hurting you." My throat tightens. For a moment, I cannot speak. I nod instead. Her words settle next to everything I already know but have been afraid to say out loud. A few weeks later, the court date arrives. The morning of the hearing, the sky is clear and sharp, the air cooler than it has any right to be for early spring in Texas. I drive downtown with a folder on the passenger seat containing copies of every document that led us here. When I park near the courthouse, my hands are steady and my stomach is in a tight knot. Both things can be true. Inside, the hallway is bright and cold. The sound of heels and hard-soled shoes on tile echoes off beige walls. People wait on benches, speaking in low voices, holding their own folders and fears. I check in with the clerk and sit where Marcus Hale, my attorney, can find me. He joins me a few minutes later, his suit crisp, his expression focused. "You ready?" he asks. "I don't know," I answer honestly. "That's okay. We'll do this anyway." Summer and Riley arrive together. Summer wears a soft cardigan and carries a tissue like she is ready to cry. Riley looks smaller than he did in our kitchen, but his jaw is clenched tight. They avoid looking at me until the bailiff calls our case, and we all file into the courtroom. Judge Howard Lane sits at the bench, gray hair neatly combed, glasses low on his nose. His presence alone commands quiet. This is not our dining room. This is not a space where anyone can shout over anyone else. We take our places, Marcus at my side, Riley and Summer with their attorney on the other table. The judge reviews the file in front of him, flipping through several pages before looking up. We are here on a matter involving disputed financial obligations, property ownership, and potential fraud. I expect everyone in this room to remain respectful while we sort through this. The process is slower than it feels on television. Questions, answers, exhibits. Summer speaks first, at her attorney's prompting. She talks about how hard it's been since Mom died, how she struggled with work, with debt, how I have a stable job, and how she believed we were working together as a family. Her voice shakes at the right moments. She looks at the judge, not at me. Riley follows, painting himself as a father who did what he had to do to keep a roof over our heads. He says paperwork was signed in good faith, that any confusion must be a misunderstanding. He implies that I am overreacting, that grief has made me misremember. It's a slick version of the same script he's used on me my whole life, now performed to a new audience. When it's our turn, Marcus stands and begins to lay out the record. He is calm, methodical. He introduces the bank statements, the loan documents, the timeline of openings and refinances. Carla Jensen comes to the stand and testifies about her conversations with me, about the signatures the bank flagged as questionable. She uses simple language, but the weight of her words is clear. Callum goes next. He explains how he obtained samples of my real signature from various sources and compared them to the loan documents. He speaks slowly, making sure the judge understands that the differences are not casual variations, but consistent deviations that suggest imitation. At one point, Marcus holds up 2 enlarged copies for the judge to see. From where I sit, I can see them too. One is my real signature, familiar and unremarkable. The other tries too hard, curves exaggerated, letters shaped just slightly wrong. This analysis shows a high probability of forgery, Callum says. In my professional opinion, these signatures were not written by Miss Holt. The courtroom is quiet enough to hear the rustle of someone shifting on a wooden bench. I look at Summer. Her face is rigid. Riley stares straight ahead, eyes narrowed. Before Marcus can wrap up, the judge receives a note from the bailiff. He reads it, then looks toward the back of the courtroom. "Mr. Jameson, please come forward." An older man stands up. I recognize him as someone I've seen around town, at the hardware store, at the diner near the highway. He walks to the front slowly but without hesitation. The clerk swears him in. Under questioning, he explains that Riley once asked him to co-sign a loan in 2016, saying it was just to help repair the house and that I would be the one paying. Papers were signed, payments were not made, collection notices followed. Eventually, the bank traced the account back to my mother's social security number and this house. Judge Lane listens without expression, then glances at Riley. "This is not the first time your name has appeared near irregular accounts," he says. Riley's attorney objects, mutters about unrelated matters, but the judge cuts him off. "It speaks to pattern, and I'm seeing a pattern I don't like." My hands grip the edge of the table. There is no satisfaction in hearing it, only a deep sadness that this is what it took for someone in authority to see what I've been feeling for years. After a brief recess, Judge Lane delivers his decision. He confirms that the deed signed by my mother in 2019 is valid. The house on Magnolia Street belongs to me. The previous ruling on eviction stands. He instructs that a formal identity theft investigation be opened regarding the loans in my name. Any accounts connected to those suspicious signatures will be temporarily frozen until the investigation concludes. This court makes no criminal finding today, he says, but the financial evidence strongly suggests misuse of Ms. Holt's identity over several years. She is not responsible for debts taken out without her informed consent. The words sink into me slowly. I don't feel triumphant. I feel a kind of exhausted relief, like I have been holding up a ceiling alone and someone finally brought in support. Outside, when the hearing finally ends and the paperwork is signed, I step through the courthouse doors into a strong Texas wind. It whips at my hair and stings my eyes. Cars move along the street, people hurry past with their own worries, their own hearings. I pull my jacket tighter around myself and stand there for a moment on the steps, breathing in air that tastes a little cleaner than it did when I walked in. Chapter 5. Freedom must be claimed. When I finally walk down the steps of the courthouse and cross the parking lot, I feel the wind pulling at my clothes, like it is trying to move me forward. I get in the car and sit there for a while with my hands on the steering wheel and my forehead resting against the leather, letting everything that just happened roll through me. The judge, the signatures, the old man who stood up and said my father had done this before. The words about ownership and fraud and responsibility. It all feels unreal and completely inevitable at the same time. The next days pass in a way that almost feels like a dream, except I am more present than I have been in years. Summer and Riley have a set amount of time to leave the house on Magnolia Street, and every day that number ticks closer. They argue less with me and more with each other. I hear them through the walls at night, their voices sharp and scared, blaming each other for how far this has gone. I do not enter those conversations. That era of my life is over. On the first Saturday after the hearing, I drive to the hardware store in town and buy a new set of locks. The man at the counter offers to have someone come install them, but I tell him I can handle it. When I get back home, I carry the small bag of hardware into the house and pause in the entryway. The light falls across the floor in a familiar pattern, and I realize that for the first time, I am looking at this space as something I am allowed to change. I wait until the day after Summer and Riley leave. I stand on the porch and watch them drive away in a car that looks more worn than I remember. There is no big final scene, no dramatic apologies. Just boxes in the trunk, a slammed door, and the sound of the engine fading down the street. It hurts less than I expected, or maybe it hurts differently. Instead of a sharp stab, it is a deep ache around a new kind of emptiness. When the house is finally quiet, I take out my tools. I unscrew the old locks, the ones my parents chose years ago, and replace them with the new ones. Each turn of the screwdriver feels like a small ritual, a way of telling the house that it does not have to hold the same stories anymore. When I test the new keys and hear the solid click of the latch, something inside me loosens. The next task is more tedious, but just as important. I sit at the kitchen table with my laptop open and a list of every company that sends mail to this address: utilities, internet provider, insurance, the county tax office. I call one by one, wading through long hold times, repeating my name, my address, my account number. I ask them to update their records so that every bill, every notice, every piece of official paper has one name on it: mine. Some of the agents on the other end sound bored, some sound kind, but each confirmation adds a thin layer of solidity under my feet. In the middle of all this, an email arrives from Marcus Hale. He writes that the documentation from the hearing has been forwarded to the state level and that the identity theft investigation is being opened formally. He explains that I may be contacted by investigators, that there may be follow-up questions, that some parts of this process will take time. He also writes something that makes me stop and read the line twice. He says that what I did in coming forward was not only reasonable, but necessary, that it took courage. I sit back in my chair and let that sink in. For so long, I thought staying quiet was the brave thing, the loyal thing. It turns out that speaking up was the real work. A few days later, Nina comes over with a cardboard box in her arms and a bright determination in her eyes. She tells me she brought organizing supplies and energy, and that we are going to use both. We start in the living room, clearing out old furniture that hasn't moved in a decade, boxing up knickknacks that belong to a version of this family that no longer lives here. We dust corners that have not seen light in years, roll up rugs that held on to too many arguments. At one point, we take a break, sitting on the floor with our backs against the freshly cleared wall. The afternoon sun slants in, illuminating dust particles that look almost pretty now that the room is open. I find myself saying, almost without planning it, that I am tired in a way that sleep has never fixed. I tell Nina about the years of paying bills I did not create, of being told I owed this house and these people my silence. I admit that there were nights when I thought this was just how life had to be, that some people were born into roles they never get to leave. Nina listens with her arms resting loosely on her knees. When she finishes, she tells me I am not tired because I am weak. I am tired because I've been holding more than my share for too long. She says that today can be the first day I stop apologizing for wanting peace. The words land softly but firmly. They feel like permission and also like a reminder that I never should have needed permission in the first place. After she leaves, I go to my room and pull out the box that holds the last pieces of my mother's handwriting. The deed is there, already recorded and used, its work done. Underneath it is the letter. I unfold it carefully. I've read it enough times now that the words come back before my eyes reach them, but this time they settle differently. She writes that she saw me, saw the way I cared for her, for the house, for people who didn't always notice what I was giving up. She writes that she wished she had done more to protect me from that burden. Near the end, there is a line I didn't let myself feel fully before. She tells me to choose myself at least once in this life, even if it makes other people angry, even if they don't understand. I sit back in my chair and let that sink in. For so long, I thought staying quiet was the brave thing, the loyal thing. It turns out that speaking up was the real work. A few days later, Nina comes over with a cardboard box in her arms and a bright determination in her eyes. She tells me she brought organizing supplies and energy, and that we are going to use both. We start in the living room, clearing out old furniture that hasn't moved in a decade, boxing up knickknacks that belong to a version of this family that no longer lives here. We dust corners that have not seen light in years, roll up rugs that held on to too many arguments. At one point, we take a break, sitting on the floor with our backs against the freshly cleared wall. The afternoon sun slants in, illuminating dust particles that look almost pretty now that the room is open. I find myself saying, almost without planning it, that I am tired in a way that sleep has never fixed. I tell Nina about the years of paying bills I did not create, of being told I owed this house and these people my silence. I admit that there were nights when I thought this was just how life had to be, that some people were born into roles they never get to leave. Nina listens with her arms resting loosely on her knees. When she finishes, she tells me I am not tired because I am weak. I am tired because I've been holding more than my share for too long. She says that today can be the first day I stop apologizing for wanting peace. The words land softly but firmly. They feel like permission, and also like a reminder that I never should have needed permission in the first place. After she leaves, I go to my room and pull out the box that holds the last pieces of my mother's handwriting. The deed is there, already recorded and used, its work done. Underneath it is the letter. I unfold it carefully. I've read it enough times now that the words come back before my eyes reach them. But this time, they settle differently. She writes that she saw me, saw the way I cared for her, for the house, for people who didn't always notice what I was giving up. She writes that she wished she had done more to protect me from that burden. Near the end, there is a line I didn't let myself feel fully before. She tells me to choose myself at least once in this life, even if it makes other people angry, even if they don't understand. I sit back in my chair with the letter in my hands and realize that everything I've done in the past months has been an answer to that request. Not perfect, not neat, but real. In the weeks that follow, I start to imagine a future that is not built entirely around preventing someone else's crisis. I sign up for a financial literacy course at the community college a few miles away. I meet with a counselor a friend at the hospital recommends and talk about boundaries and guilt and how to rebuild a sense of self that is not defined by what I provide. I walk around my own neighborhood in the evenings, noticing things I've missed for years. The way the sky turns soft pink over the tops of the oak trees. The way kids ride their bikes in circles in a driveway down the block, shouting without fear of being told they are too loud. One night, I stand on my front porch as the sun lowers behind the roofs across the street. The air is warm but not heavy, and the light turns everything it touches a deep, forgiving gold. I think about the girl I was at 12 and the woman I was at 38 and how both of them felt trapped by a story they didn't write. I think about the moments I opened that bank notification and the way it led me here, step by step, choice by choice, into a life that finally feels like mine. There is still an investigation underway. There will still be conversations I don't want to have, paperwork I don't want to fill out, memories that sting when I bump into them. My father and sister will tell their own versions of this story to anyone who will listen, and some people will believe them. I can't control any of that. What I can control is what I do with the years I have left. If you are hearing this and any part of it sounds familiar, if you recognize the quiet dread of checking your accounts or the shame of being blamed for trying to protect yourself, I want you to know something. Silence is not the same thing as peace. It can feel safer in the moment, but it keeps you standing in the same fire while you pretend you are not burning. Sometimes, the only way to protect the life that belongs to you is to step toward the truth, even when your hands shake, even when your voice does too. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to draw lines. You are allowed to tell your story all the way through. And if you want to stay and listen to more stories like mine or share your own, I will be here, still learning how to choose myself, one honest word at a time.